Hello, I'm Gina Mauricio, and I am currently working with a 47-year-old, 128-pound female recreational marathon runner with a finishing goal time of 3 hours and 55 minutes. She has asked me, while maintaining my 2,000 calorie a day diet, what should my nutritional profile look like in terms of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to help me reduce my marathon finishing time? As a health and human performance professional, I will answer this question based on a critical review of scientific evidence-based literature. For as long as I can remember, endurance athletes, especially the recreational crowd, have been carbo loading throughout their training season. This strategy is recommended in the popular press as well as in social circles. I have known many people to take up half and full marathon running to then tell me that their friends have told them they need to eat more pasta. But in the evidence-based research world, researchers are questioning if this is the best nutritional strategy and are researching if lower carbohydrate, higher fat diets are better for fueling the body for better performance and, more importantly, for long-term health. In a meta-analysis published in 2005 by Erlingbusch et al., the subject of high carbohydrate or high fat diets for endurance training was reviewed. As far as high carbohydrate diet goes, Erlingbusch et al. 2005 noted a slight performance benefit to endurance exercise compared to a higher fat diet. But it must be noted that in the 20 studies that were included in the review, they had a lot of variability, which made them very difficult to compare to each other for critical appraisal. Based on such variability, Erlingbusch et al. 2005 state that a high carbohydrate diet for performance cannot be recommended with confidence. For a runner to make an educated decision on whether a diet higher in carbs or higher in fat is best for their endurance performance, we need to look at the body's capacity to store carbs and fat and subsequently use them as fuels. Spry et 2007 state during 2 to 4 hours of marathon training and racing, the body utilizes carbohydrates stored in working muscles in the liver and fat stored in muscle and adipose tissue, which is fat tissue. Despite runners using carbo loading strategies, the body has a limited storage capacity for carbohydrates. According to Volek, Noakes, and Finney 2015, the body has the ability to store 2,000 calories of carbohydrates, whereas fat is stored at a much greater capacity. Even a lean individual with 7 to 14% body fat stores more than 30,000 calories in the muscle and adipose tissue, and a more average-sized person over the age of 40 with greater body fat in the 20 to 30% range stores as much as 90,000 calories of fat. If the body is adapted to utilize fat as a more primary source of fuel, up to 90,000 calories of fat storage would fuel multiple back-to-back marathons. Whereas the limited capacity of carbohydrate storage can be performance limiting because all storage is exhausted before getting to the finish line and hitting the dreaded wall, which according to Rappaport 2010, more than 2/5 of marathon runners fall victim to performance-limiting depletion of carbohydrate reserves. The question then becomes, if the physiological capacity of the body has a greater capacity for fat storage, why have runners traditionally had higher carbohydrate, lower fat diets? It is possible that traditionally the recreational running community mimics the fueling strategies of more elite level runners. Both Rappaport 2010 and Spry et 2007 state that carbohydrate and fat use depends on the distance run and the intensity of the run. Faster, elite level runners run at an intensity of 80 to 90% VO2 max for finishing times between 2:05 and 2:20, therefore finishing the race before carbohydrate depletion. Recreational runners, on the other hand, finish a race in 3 hours and 45 minutes and are running at 60 to 65% of VO2 max and will rely heavily on carbohydrate and fat to finish without hitting the wall. According to Hawley, Burke, Phillips, and Spry et 2011, the oxidation or the use of fat is important in energy production during low to moderate intensity exercise such as those running marathons greater than 4 hours and as fast as 2 hours and 45 minutes. Holly et al. 2011 state consuming a high-fat diet while marathon training can increase training-induced fat oxidation, reduce carbohydrate use, and delay the onset of fatigue during exercise, therefore decreasing marathon finishing times because the body doesn't run out of stored fuel and has better access to all forms of stored fuel in the body. So what is even considered high fat or high carbohydrate, and what can I recommend to recreational marathon runners looking to improve their race times? In the meta-analysis by Erlingbusch et al. 2005, the authors stated a high carbohydrate diet consisted of 50% or greater of dietary calories, whereas a higher fat diet consisted of 30% or greater dietary calories. Much of the research I reviewed states that one problem associated with higher fat diets is that the runner's subjective observations that there seems to be a greater rate of perceived effort. Taking this into consideration and allowing for gradual adaptation, I would suggest taking a conservative approach to decreasing carbohydrates in the diet. In a review article by Bartlett, Holly, and Morton 2015, the authors note that 3 to 5 grams per kilogram of carbohydrate is acceptable for low-intensity aerobic exercise. Taking the lower value of 3 grams per kilogram of carbohydrates in a runner weighing 128 pounds, this would calculate out to 174 grams of carbohydrates per day, or 35% of a 2,000 calorie a day diet. Protein needs need to facilitate recovery and maintenance of lean muscle mass. An endurance runner should be 1.4 grams per kilogram of body weight, according to Bernardo 2012, which will make up 16% of the daily calories for my example runner with a 2,000 calorie a day diet. This will leave 49% of daily calories from dietary fat. I want to make it very clear that the evidence is overwhelming regarding the body's ability to store and use fat as fuel. However, there have not been specific studies on middle-aged female runners completing a marathon distance trial, thus leaving gaps in research to apply to the demographic I'm specifically speaking of, as well as many other demographics. Another point is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all nutritional plan, such as we should all carbohydrate load throughout our training season. The best way to figure out what works with your individual physiology is through self-experimentation. If a runner has run multiple marathons and continually hits the wall and falls short of their goals time after time, and adaptations to training have already been made, then it's time to look at their nutritional structure to find out what would provide the best performance enhancing effects. Yep.